The midnight air was thick and still in the town of Willow Creek, with only the soft rustling of leaves filling the silence. 11-year-old Noah Carter lay on the roof of his house. A blanket wrapped around his shoulders, his eyes locked on the endless expanse of stars. Noah wasn't like the other kids in his neighborhood. He was a genius, a prodigy. Teachers didn't know what to do with him, and his classmates didn't understand him. The only place he felt truly at peace was up here, with the mysteries of the universe stretching out above him. But tonight felt different. There was a strange energy in the air, something he couldn't quite put into words. Just as he was about to dismiss it as his imagination, he spotted a light moving rapidly across the sky. At first, he thought it was a plane, but it was far too fast, and the light was far too bright. It grew larger, brighter, and began to change colors, blues, greens, purples all, pulsing with an almost hypnotic rhythm. Noah's heart pounded as he watched, captivated and terrified. His mind raced through the possibilities. A meteor, a satellite. But this was unlike anything he'd ever read about. He blinked, trying to clear his vision, but the light only intensified, washing over him, filling every inch of his senses. Suddenly, a low, resonant hum vibrated through the air, and Noah felt his body go rigid. The hum grew louder, a strange, otherworldly sound that filled him with an instinctive dread. Just as he opened his mouth to scream, the light swallowed him whole, and everything went dark. When Noah's vision returned, he found himself floating in a massive, dimly lit chamber. Cold, metallic walls pulsed with a soft blue glow, and strange symbols shimmered on surfaces he didn't recognize. His body was held in place by an invisible force like gravity, but heavier, pressing him down, yet keeping him suspended. His heart raced as he took in his surroundings, panic rising in his chest. Then he noticed them. Tall, slender figures with smooth, translucent skin and large, unblinking eyes were staring at him in silence. The aliens moved with a grace and stillness that was unnerving, their expressions impossible to read. Noah's mind spun. He had always dreamed of making first contact, of meeting beings from beyond Earth. But now, faced with the real thing, all he felt was terror. One of the aliens stepped forward, its long fingers reaching toward him. Noah's breath caught, fear squeezing his chest like a vice. The alien extended a hand, and a bright, holographic display flickered to life in front of Noah, showing complex symbols and equations that seemed to pulse with energy. Noah's fear turned to confusion, then to fascination. They were showing him something to test, perhaps. His genius mind couldn't help but engage, and with a tentative focus, he began to study the symbols. But deep down, a voice screamed, "They abducted you, Noah. You're not safe here." The silent beings guided Noah down endless hallways of twisting metallic corridors, each wall covered in unfamiliar symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Noah felt small and vulnerable in the alien labyrinth, his fear kept in check only by his burning curiosity. They led him to a circular room, filled with strange, floating devices that hummed with energy. Screens blinked to life as he entered, projecting a series of images and complex mathematical formulas he barely understood. As he took in the surroundings, Noah realized they were examining him, watching his every move, as if studying his reactions. One of the aliens raised a long, thin arm, and a wave of sound, a haunting, melodic tone echoed through the room. The sound seemed to bypass his ears, resonating directly in his mind, filling him with an odd mixture of calm and fear. Then, a screen floated toward him, displaying what looked like an intricate puzzle, a mind-bending maze of numbers and symbols. Noah felt his heart skip as he realized the aliens wanted him to solve it. It was some sort of test. He hesitated, his brain worried through possible solutions, analyzing the patterns and connections between the symbols. But his fear was growing. Was this a trap? What would they do if he couldn't solve it? With a deep breath, he pushed aside the fear and focused, his mind slipping into the familiar rhythm of problem-solving. Minutes passed in silence as he worked, his fingers moving instinctively over the symbols, guiding the solution into place. When he finished, the screen pulsed, and the alien in charge nodded. If he could call it a nod. Just as Noah felt a small rush of pride, a new screen appeared, with another puzzle, more complex than the last. They were pushing him, testing the limits of his intelligence and endurance. Each puzzle became harder, more layered, until his mind ached and his vision blurred. But he refused to give in. He lost track of time as the tests continued, his brain stretched and strained, his every ounce of energy focused on keeping up. But he noticed something peculiar. The aliens seemed almost intrigued. They watched him with an intensity that suggested they weren't just testing him, they were assessing his potential. Finally, after what felt like hours, the puzzles stopped. Noah's head throbbed, his muscles aching from tension. He slumped, exhausted, but a fierce pride glowed within him. They had tried to break him, to test the very limits of his genius, and he had held his ground. But as the aliens exchanged silent glances, a chill crept up Noah's spine. He had passed their tests, but the glint in their eyes suggested that they had far bigger plans for him. Plans he might not survive. Noah lay in this strange, featureless room that served as his cell, his body heavy with exhaustion, but his mind racing. The relentless mental tests had drained him, but he'd held his own against the alien intelligence. Yet each passing moment brought a gnawing feeling of dread. He was a captive here, at the mercy of beings whose motives he couldn't understand. He knew he had to escape. There was no telling what the aliens might do next. In the quiet hours, while the lights dimmed, he began analyzing everything he'd observed. He replayed each test in his mind, every glance, every tiny detail of the ship's interior. And that's when he remembered it. During one test, he had caught a glimpse of an unguarded control panel down one of the hallways, and from the symbols on it, he'd recognized something familiar. A doorway, a series of numbers coordinates, perhaps. He didn't know if it could get him off the ship, but it was a start. He spent the next few days or weeks. He had no way to track time, pain, and compliance, allowing the aliens to lead him from test to test, all the while memorizing the ship's layout. Every flickering symbol, every blinking light, became part of an intricate map in his mind. When he returned to his cell, he'd lie awake, replaying the map over and over, mentally walking each corridor until he knew the ship as well as he knew his own home. Finally, one night, he noticed the routine he'd been hoping for. His cell door slid shut with its usual soft hum, but this time, he was ready. He had noticed that the guards, if he could call them, that did their rounds in exact, predictable intervals. Timing his movements, Noah took a thin piece of metal he'd managed to pry from his cell's light fixture and wedged it into the door mechanism. A soft click echoed in the silence, and his door slid open just a crack. Heart pounding, Noah slipped into the hallway. The ship was deathly quiet, and he moved carefully, his senses heightened, straining to detect any movement. He ducked behind walls and into alcoves, his small frame a blur in the dim, blue-tinted light of the alien vessel. His pulse roared in his ears as he approached the control panel he'd seen before. It glowed softly, lines of alien script flowing across its surface. Hand shaking, Noah touched the panel, trying to recall the sequence of symbols he'd memorized. He pressed his fingers against the cold metal, and the symbols shifted, unlocking a new screen. A map appeared, and he quickly noted a symbol that looked like an exit, leading to what he guessed was an escape pod. His mind raced. This was his chance, but he couldn't afford to make a single mistake. Just as he entered the last sequence, a shrill alarm blared, the sound slicing through the silence. Panic surged as he heard the rapid, heavy footsteps of the aliens approaching. His fingers flew across the panel, overwriting what he hoped was the security system. The escape pod's door slid open, and Noah darted inside, his heart pounding like a drum. The pod's interior was cramped, filled with controls that he only half understood. But there was one he did recognize, the launch button. He hesitated for a split second, catching a glimpse of the aliens rushing toward him, their large eyes wide with something that almost looked like admiration. Then he slammed the button. The escape pod launched, rocketing away from the alien ship. Noah gripped the controls, his knuckles white as the pod hurtled through space, the stars stretching and blurring around him. He was freer, so he thought. But as he navigated the unfamiliar controls, a warning light flashed, and an unfamiliar hum filled the pod. Noah realized with dread that the aliens hadn't just let him go. They were tracking him. A screen flickered to life, and he saw the massive outline of the alien ship behind him, its engines roaring as it closed the distance. A cold sweat prickled down his spine as he pushed buttons, trying to figure out how to increase the pod's speed. Nothing seemed to work, and the alien ship grew larger by the second. Then, he noticed something, a single command written in alien script, flashing urgently on the screen. Noah's mind worked furiously, deciphering the symbols. It seemed to indicate a weapon system. He couldn't believe it. They had equipped the pod with defenses. He activated the weapons, and a series of strange, sleek-looking drones emerged from the pod, surrounding it in a protective formation. Through the view screen, he saw the alien ship hesitate. He had surprised them. With a rush of confidence, Noah directed the drones to form a line in front of the pod, creating a shield. He felt a fierce surge of determination. If the aliens wanted him back, they were going to have to fight for it. But the aliens didn't fire. Instead, they sent a single communication to his pod, a message that blinked in strange, almost pleading symbols. Noah strained to understand, and the message became clearer as his brain adjusted to their language. They were offering him a choice. They wanted him to return unharmed, and they were apologizing. They were impressed with his intelligence, with his resilience. The tests hadn't been meant to harm him, but to understand him, to see the potential of human intellect. Noah hesitated, his hands hovering over the controls. Anger flared in his chest as he remembered the fear, the exhaustion, the endless tests he'd endured. But there was something else in their message, a sense of respect and a request for cooperation. They wanted him to join them, to learn, to share knowledge, to be something greater. The silence stretched as he considered their offer, his mind racing. Noah's hands hovered over the control panel, his heart a mix of emotions he couldn't fully process. He had fought with everything he had to escape, to get back to Earth, to the life he knew. But now in the quiet, his anger began to subside. The message from the aliens played again on the screen, its symbols gently pulsing, almost inviting. They were asking him to stay, offering an alliance that he hadn't expected. He closed his eyes, memories of his family and his home flooding his mind. He longed for the familiar, the warmth of his mom's hugs, his dad's steady voice, the simple safety of being a kid. But a new part of him, part he hadn't known existed before this, journey felt an undeniable pull towards something greater. The aliens saw him not just as a kid, but as a mind capable of remarkable things. They wanted to work with him, to teach him knowledge that stretched beyond Earth's imagination. Noah took a deep breath, his decision becoming clearer. He wasn't just choosing for himself, he was representing the potential of all humans. And this opportunity might only come once. Slowly, he reached for the control panel and typed his response in a hesitant but steady sequence of symbols. Accepting their offer, almost immediately, the alien ship's engines powered down, and the tracking signal faded. A familiar hum filled his escape pod as it slowed, reversing course. The alien vessel opened to receive him. But this time, there was no fear in his heart, only a cautious sense of excitement. When the pod docked, Noah stepped out to see a group of aliens waiting for him, their large, unblinking eyes watching him with a respect he hadn't seen before. One of them, a tall, silver-skinned alien, who seemed to be the leader, stepped forward, extending a hand in a gesture of welcome. Hesitating for only a moment, Noah reached out, shaking the alien's hand in a tentative but powerful gesture of friendship. They led him through the ship again, this time showing him areas he hadn't seen during his captivity. He walked through a vast library filled with floating screens that displayed knowledge from countless worlds, rooms with technology that defied everything he thought he knew, and laboratories where he saw other beings from other planets working side by side with the aliens who had abducted him. They weren't conquerors or villains, they were explorers, scientists, seekers of knowledge. In a quiet chamber, the leader showed him a console, inviting him to look at a view of Earth through a holographic projection. Noah's heart ached as he saw his home, the green and blue planet so far below. He thought of his family, of how they would worry and miss him. But then he reminded himself that this was temporary. He would return, and when he did, he'd bring back more knowledge, a deeper understanding of the universe than any human had ever had before. Over the next few days, Noah immersed himself in his new role. The aliens taught him advanced sciences, languages, and philosophies that expanded his mind in ways he hadn't dreamed possible. They shared their history with him, stories of their journeys through galaxies and their search for intelligent life forms. In turn, he shared with them what he knew, stories of Earth's triumphs and struggles, of the spirit of humanity and its resilience. Days turned into weeks, and Noah felt himself growing stronger, smarter, more connected with the vast universe. And when the time finally came for him to return, he felt a pang of sadness mixed with pride. He had been changed forever, shaped by the stars and the knowledge they held. The aliens gathered to see him off, their eyes reflecting the respect and gratitude they felt for the human child. who had shown them the strength of Earth's mind and heart. The leader offered him a small device, a communicator, so that one day, if he chose, he could reconnect with them. With a final wave, he stepped into the escape pod, feeling the pull of Earth calling him back. As he hurtled through space toward home, Noah realized he was bringing back more than knowledge. He was bringing back a promising connection between Earth and the stars, a future shaped by the alliance he had created. When he finally landed back on Earth, he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer just a kid who dreamed of the stars. He was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of what humans could achieve, and a beacon of hope for the future.